Hiya, welcome to the Radicus channel, where we talk about dumb historical events in a historically dumb world. Unrelated question. Have you guys ever heard of Napoleon Bonaparte before? You know, one of the most successful military generals in world history, and a man whose life story and career in military tactics and genius has been revered by people around the world, both good and horribly bad. Regardless of what you think of the man, there is no denying that Napoleon Bonaparte is one of the most influential and important human beings who have ever stepped foot on this planet. So what's this about rabbits? To understand Napoleon's supposed battle with a band of rabbits, we must first travel back to the 7th of July of 1807, during the final stages of the War of the Fourth Coalition. This was right after Napoleon had signed the first Treaty of Tilsit with Tsar Alexander of Russia, after Napoleon's forces had just completely demolished the Russian army during the Battle of Friedland. 2 days later, on the 9th of July 1807, he signed the second Treaty of Tilsit with the Empire of Prussia, after also similarly decimating their armies in a series of battles that had lasted during the War of the Fourth Coalition. The two treaties of Tilsit greatly increased French power and expanded their territory, and in order to celebrate this monumental international victory, which was the fourth so far in Napoleon's long and storied career, his chief of staff, Alexander Berthier, decided to celebrate this occasion with a rabbit hunt. Now, Berthier, in order to do this, sent his men out into the French shops in order to obtain roughly 1,000 rabbits. And after obtaining this required amount of rabbits for the Grand Emperor of France, he invited Napoleon over. Napoleon arrived, ate a good breakfast, and prepared himself and his entourage for the rabbit hunt. Berthier's men released the roughly 1,000 rabbits out into the garden, and so at first Napoleon and his men had no issue picking off the rabbits as they scattered around, very unorganized, around the garden. But soon, something very strange began to happen. The crowd of rabbits that had just been running and dispersing in different directions began to merge together into one massive group of rabbits that suddenly surged itself towards Napoleon and his entourage. And almost immediately after this, the battle turned into a melee, where Napoleon's and Berthier's men had to use whips in order to drive back the massive rabbit horde. And this worked for a time. However, the rabbits, seemingly with a great understanding of Napoleonic tactics, split into two groups, which flanked Napoleon's entourage from both the left and the right. After this, Napoleon and his men simply had to flee. There was nothing else that they could do. And so they all ran back to the carriage. Napoleon leapt on. Some rabbits actually followed him onto the carriage, which did drive off. And after a while, all the rabbits were eventually kicked out of the carriage, and Napoleon managed to get home safely after encountering a band of bloodthirsty, vicious, violent rabbits. Now, as you can imagine, Napoleon and his top officials weren't really happy about the fact that Bugs Bunny and his gang of misfits almost got the jump on the Emperor of France. And so they decided to launch an investigation into, why this happened. After launching the investigation, it was found that, hilariously, Berthier's men, the men who were sent to the shops to collect the hundreds of rabbits, did not know the difference between a wild rabbit and a tame rabbit. Though visually they are the same, a wild rabbit is, it's wild. It is shy and wary of humans. They're not used to us, and that's why they're great for hunting, because they actually run away. Meanwhile, tame rabbits are used to human presence. They're used to us, like giving them food, petting them, nourishing them, raising them. They're used to our presence. We are very familiar to the tame rabbit. And so when Berthier sent out his men into the shops to collect all the rabbits, they mainly collected tame rabbits. And so first of all, tame rabbits are used to human interaction. And second of all, the process of transportation meant that they hadn't eaten for a while.
making them hungry. And so when the hunt began and Berthier's men released the rabbits, you know, they were hungry. And because they were so used to humans feeding them, naturally they ran towards Napoleon and his men. And so, yeah, it seemed that Napoleon's grand rabbit hunt and how, like, badly it almost turned out was simply a result of Berthier's men not understanding the difference between a wild and a tame rabbit. And with that, thanks for watching. Oh, right, yeah, thank God he stopped talking. I thought he would never stop yapping. Anyways, you might be wondering why I'm here when he already said, thanks for watching the video. And this is to make a very clear distinction between the previous part, where we discuss the story, and the following part, where we will be discussing its historical accuracy. In my opinion, the story of Napoleon's rabbit hunt is not real, okay? It's, in my opinion, not real. There's not enough sources to support it. If you don't want me to, like, ruin the joy of the story for you, like, it's dumb and stupid and funny, it's completely understandable, and you're free to click off this video now. Just please subscribe, like, and press the notification bell. Being a YouTuber, doing this is my dream job, and this is a great first step, you know, making my first video. Ooh, so great. So, thank you very much. It will help me out a lot, and if you are leaving now, I wish you a good day. Anyways, for those who, like, do want to stick around and want me to ruin this story for you, by all means, stay, because the following section will be discussing Napoleon's rabbit hunt, historical accuracy. Okay, so as it turns out, actually researching the story of Napoleon's rabbit hunt proved to be incredibly difficult. All the websites that I searched that, like, when you just type it up initially and that you get, all just linked to one another.
Hiya everyone, Editor Radicus here. I just want to correct some things that Radicus in the video said. I can't use my camera to re-record right now since it is my parents and they're currently using it for something, so I'll just do a little quick voice recording instead. Now, Radicus in the video stated some things that were incorrect, and I'll restate them now. Most of the websites that pop up when you initially search for Napoleon's rabbit hunt do not link to anything. They have no sources. Some of them, like Radicus said, do link to each other, but the vast majority of them don't even have any sources at all. Only a couple of websites had some really good sources, like for example books written by historians or a memoir back from the time, which Radicus in the video will discuss later. I just want to record this right now just in order to set the record straight. Yeah, there were some things that Radicus in the video said wrong. Anyways, yeah, I just want to set the record straight and correct some things that I said in the video. And yeah, cheers. Thanks for listening to this little rambling segment, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the video. Goodbye.
Now, there was one source I was able to find which I thought was very interesting, and that was David G. Chandler's Campaigns of Napoleon. It is a sprawling 1,000-page book, and it discusses basically a lot of Napoleon's campaigns. It discusses the story of Napoleon's rabbit hunt in pages 593 and 594. However, it doesn't provide a lot of details. Again, a date isn't provided, and the story is once again extremely vague. It does discuss the movement of the rabbits, but apart from that, that's about it. The other important source, which I consider to be the most important one, was written by a man named forgot his name. Hold on just a bit. Okay, I found it. Hold on, just from a man named Paul Charles Francois Adrien Henry Dudonné Theobald. Thank you. More specifically, the memoir written by Mr. Theobald was published in 1896 and detailed the story of Napoleon's alleged rabbit hunt from pages 185 to 186. However, frustratingly, again, like David G. Chandler's Campaigns of Napoleon, it doesn't provide a lot of details at all. Once again, a date isn't even provided. We don't even know when this happened. We know from a lot of web sources that it happened after the Treaties of Tilsit as part of a celebration, and I think Theobald mentions this as well. However, a date isn't provided, and a lot of details are just sadly missing. All in all, do you think the story of Napoleon's rabbit hunt is real? I personally don't. I personally do not. There's only two really like interesting sources that talk about it: David G. Chandler's book and Mr. Theobald's memoir. Apart from that, we have nothing else. We just have a bunch of web links just like sourcing each other. That's it. Another reason I like to discuss on why this story might not be real is the fact that there are no other accounts of the story apart from Theobald's that I could find at the time.
There was another source that I forgot to mention, but that source is a newspaper which came before the generally agreed date of 1807 and doesn't even mention Napoleon by name, so I'm not going to include it. Also, side tangent, this story has for some reason been so hard to research, not because like there's a lack of sources, but just because there's nothing concrete. The date isn't concrete, the details are very vague. It's so very hard to research. Although why is it so hard to research? It's literally just a dumb rabbit hunt with no consequences. And now back to a regularly scheduled program.
Berthier's men didn't say anything about it. The men who sold the rabbits to Berthier's men didn't talk anything about it. Berthier didn't talk about it, and Napoleon certainly didn't talk about it, even though he was exiled to St. Helena, where he had plenty of time to write about his memoirs and preserve his legacy. The lack of evidence doesn't mean it didn't happen, it's just that we don't know. There are no statements saying that a rabbit hunt did not occur, it's just that we have no idea if it occurred or not, and in my opinion, due to the lack of evidence, it doesn't. Again, I don't care if the story of Napoleon's rabbit hunt is real, okay? Even though the more logical side of me believes it's not, a little bit of me will always believe it happened. Because it's funny, simply because it is funny. I like to believe that a bunch of animals were able to get the jump on one of the most influential figures in world history. That is just such a funny thought. But it's also a scary and dark and sinister thought that Napoleon's rabbit hunt could be real. Because if they sent one of the most important people in history running away, and one of the most powerful men in the world at the time to run away, could you imagine what they could do to me? And could you imagine what they could do to you?